well, if I do say so myself, having roughly cut this piece out into a top, that looks pretty good. Pretty good indeed. For the back, that's oak. I got some wood that used to be a freestanding oak wardrobe, and it has some large panels like that, and there's some even wider ones. It looks like a really wide piece of oak. In some cases it's not. And I think that's the case here. Yeah, there is a join down the middle. So that's two pieces glued together. But I trust that glue join. It seems pretty good. So I am using that for the back. So let's glue this on and then make some design decisions, other than the obvious one that I've made about the shape of the guitar. It's always a challenge when gluing a top on to get a good distribution of clamping pressure. And I think I've hit on a good way of doing that. I'm probably the last person to realize that this is a good idea. But I'm using the body template as a clamping caul, which seems to, I mean, of course you would think, yes, of course that would distribute pressure in all the right places because it's exactly the same shape as the body. So there we are. I'm gluing that top on. And you can see, oops, you can see my hand in the shot there. You can see at the end there that I've actually routed the cable routing, the cable channels into the top rather than the back. And the top really is almost as thick as that part. It's almost not really a top and a body, it's a front and a back, which are about the same size. So I could have routed the cable routing into either one. But there it is in the top. I'm looking forward to taking the clamps off and seeing what lies beneath. As you saw me doing with my trusty router, I've routed the front and the back nice and flush with each other. There's a slight irregularity there. And then I did some sanding. Sanded the outside curves with my random orbital sander, and the inside curves with my spindle sander. I was just noticing there's a slight bump there, which I'll fix with the spindle sander, no worries. Okay, looks pretty good. It's almost a shame to have to put pickups and hardware on the front, but you do kind of have to, or you don't really have much of a guitar. The back is fairly plain, but still quite nice. Simple by comparison with the front. A slight defect there on the recycled wood, but that's okay because I'm going to do a pretty deep round over on the back, so that'll be cut out completely. For the top, I mean, a round over does look nice when you've got very detailed wood like that, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I might bind the top. Do I do that yet? Maybe I'll do some cavities first. Anyway, let's do those things. Alright, so you can see that has cut a small channel all the way around the top. And now I'm just going to compare the height of that channel with the height of the binding and make any adjustments to that, make it taller if I need to. And yeah, that's a bit, I mean, it's good to err on the side that I have, but that binding is considerably taller than the channel, so I will just make that channel a little bit taller. Right, so I've cut the binding channel to a good height. Now it's going to sit nicely all the way around the body. And then with a minimal amount of sanding and scraping, I will have the surfaces of the binding and the wood flush with each other. I can't bind it just yet because, I don't want to go binding all the way around here and then cut the neck pocket through the binding. That would be silly. So I need to cut the neck pocket. But before I can cut the neck pocket, I need to build the neck, because what I do is I build the neck and then I build the neck pocket template around the end of the neck, and then I cut the neck pocket so that way I can be more sure that the pocket will be the right size. So I'll set the body aside for now, like so, and let's make a neck. With the body set aside over yonder just for now, I'll turn my attention to the wood for the neck. I won't show you all parts of me making the neck. You've seen me make necks before. I'm getting slightly better at it. So I'm going to use those two pieces there. Not that bit. That's obviously a little bit damaged. One of these pieces looks nicer than the other. This is native New Zealand wood. This is tawa, which I do really like. And this is a very traditional guitar making wood, an exotic wood, rosewood. It was originally used to make a packing crate, although the person I bought it from suspects that was just a method of getting rosewood into the country. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to use those two pieces, so I better start cleaning them up and preparing them. Well, they don't look quite so rough now. Well, the rosewood never really looked rough, but the tawa did. It certainly doesn't now. Here's a brief update. I'm doing all the normal things one does when one builds a neck. So I've routed the channel for the truss rod. The rod's actually sitting in there now. And the neck piece as built wasn't wide enough for the headstock. So I'm gluing on an additional piece of wood, another piece of rosewood, to maintain the stripe between rosewood, the stripy effect between rosewood and tawa. And when that's dried, I'll cut out the shape of the neck, and I'll bring you back at some point, probably around when I'm putting the fretboard on briefly, because you've seen that before too. Well, I've glued the fretboard on. And there's not much to see just now because it's all covered up with a couple of planks that I'm using as clamping cauls. So, yeah, we'll just let that glue dry and come back tomorrow. I've skipped out a few steps, but the neck pocket is there. I drilled it out and then I routed it out slightly looser than I would have liked. The end does not fit well, but that's okay. At the end of the neck there where it touches the body and there are all those gaps, there's going to be a big hole because I'm putting a pickup cavity there, so I wasn't too concerned about that. I'm just finishing up the binding of the body now, just a single layer of binding, as I mentioned earlier when I cut the binding channel. You've seen me do binding before, if you've watched my older videos. That clamp there is just holding the binding down. I've put some more acetone in there because there was a small gap, and that clamp should hold it in place until it's all dry. This is always a somewhat exciting moment in the build of a guitar. I'm gluing the neck in. There are several ways to attach a neck, and, well, just gluing it in is one way. Some of these scenes would be easier with a camera person to hold the camera while I work, but what I'm doing just now is tidying up where things join. There was some overhang of the neck over the body, and there was a little bit of overhang of the body over the neck as well. What I'm doing now is, firstly with the Shinto saw rasp, which I've already begun using, and then with a a chemically polished file, similar to an Iwasaki file, and then probably some sandpaper. I'm just basically trying to morph all of this into one smooth shape so that there are no awkward overlaps or no uncomfortable joins.